covering the world of professional wrestling. This is the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much for joining me on the latest episode of the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. As always, I greatly appreciate your ongoing support. Hopefully you're still not nursing that post-WrestleMania hangover. And by that I mean that you took in hours upon hours upon hours of professional wrestling. Not that I'm complaining. I live tweeted throughout the entire weekend, thoroughly enjoyed myself. Hopefully you followed me on Twitter. In fact, it was a record for me. Over 1.5 million impressions, and I have you to thank for that. I was active, great dialogue, great conversation, and overall, a very memorable WrestleMania weekend. In fact, I'm going to cover the full shebang momentarily, recap NXT TakeOver New York, the WWE Hall of Fame, G1 Supercard. I actually had them both up simultaneously on two different screens, and of course, WrestleMania 35. I'm also going to highlight the Raw and Smackdown after Mania, plus I'm joined by Ryan Boman. We're going to speculate and make our predictions for the upcoming Superstar Shakeup.
Your weekly recap.
Let us start with NXT TakeOver New York. It took place on Friday from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. This is deja vu. Every single time I jump onto the show, open a microphone, and I mention NXT TakeOver, somehow not only do I sing the praises of the show, and rightfully so, but the bar was raised yet again. How is it humanly possible? Yes, this card looked outstanding on paper, perhaps the best to date, and some could argue that this was the best overall card to date in terms of execution. If you want to watch the live stream, I jumped onto my Facebook fan page. You can like it now, the Signature Spot, and I discussed this card at length, but I'll do it again. It kicked off with the War Raiders, Hanson and Rowe, defeating Aleister Black and Ricochet. To me, it was a highly emotional match because I knew this was the swan song for Black and Ricochet. You look at the past year, both of them, fixtures on NXT television, they elevated the brand. They were two of the main individuals that took it to that next tier. So I'm going to sincerely miss them from Wednesday evenings. I wish them the very best on the main roster, but they will always be NXT through and through. They will bleed yellow to me. This match was outstanding. What a way to kick off the show. Again, you've heard me mention this in the past. The two most important matches, the opener and the main event. Coincidentally, two of the best matches on the card. This was a hard-hitting affair, and they all laid it on the line. You heard me use the word emotional. When the War Raiders bowed, showing respect to Black and Ricochet, I was genuinely moved, especially watching it for a second time. So Black and Ricochet said their goodbyes, and then there was a story behind the scenes that I absolutely love and I want to share here. Kathy Kelly was talking to Aleister Black and Ricochet. She thanked them for their contributions to NXT. In fact, she noted, "You made NXT better." Aleister Black interrupted and said, No, NXT made us better. Humble, driven, and two very, very special talents. The Velveteen Dream made an entrance only fit for him. All eyes were on him. All attention was on him. He was the Statue of Liberty. Carried out by four individuals, he ended up surviving, not even defeating Matt Riddle, who dominated the vast majority of the match. If you were not a Matt Riddle fan, you should be now. He's aggressive. He's unique. How about that spot? That elevated German suplex. From the outside to the inside, it had Velveteen Dream flip on top of his stomach. It was frightening yet satisfying based on the fact that he was perfectly okay. So the Dream retained his North American Championship when he rolled through, reminiscent of Bret Hart and Roddy Piper, and also Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin. He had a modified pin, 1, 2, 3. It's not the last we're going to see Matt Riddle compete for the North American Championship. And I believe the next time this match takes place, we will see a changing of the guard, so to speak. Walter, the Enigma, ran through Pete Dunne, but it was far more competitive than I initially anticipated. Far different from any other match on the card. Very brutal. Again, it was that hard-hitting style that they are both very well known for. And the 685-day streak, which is absolutely remarkable, by the way, of Pete Dunne as UK champion came to a conclusion. Pete Dunne is built for the main roster. I would like to see him graduate from WWE NXT UK to either Raw or SmackDown. It was a fatal four-way. For the NXT Women's Championship, Shayna Baszler defeated Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, and Kairi Sane. To me, it was logical that Shayna retained in a fatal four-way. If it was one-on-one, I would have immediately predicted that she would lose. She forced Bianca Belair to tap out. So I do believe it will be Io Shirai to eventually dethrone Shayna, but she'll be sticking around NXT for a little while longer. The main event. It was a 2 out of 3 falls match for the vacant NXT Championship. It was Johnny Takeover versus Adam Cole. Baby, man, the near falls in this match were absolutely outstanding. Now, many could argue, Chris, Johnny Gargano kicked out of a lot of big moves. But at the same time, I guarantee you were still on the edge of your seat and you catered to your audience. And they were expecting a hard-hitting affair with a lot of kickouts, a lot of drama, and those two told a very compelling story. That's close to a 5-star match in my books. Johnny Gargano got his arm raised to become the NXT champion. What a moment. The crowd erupted. I felt as though early on, most were pulling for Adam Cole, but by the end, after Johnny Gargano fought off Cole and the rest of the Undisputed Era, they fully bought into his victory. And then, of course, the creme de la creme, the greatest moment from the card that I will fully admit I have full goosebumps. Just picturing this moment again, I even had tears in my eyes. I will fully admit it. I am not ashamed about that at all. Johnny Gargano is celebrating. Candice LeRae comes out. They walk up the ramp. And that bottom third, once that hits, you know Tommaso Ciampa is not far behind. And then, of course, Johnny Gargano, he mellows out loud. He's behind me, isn't he? Tommaso Ciampa walks out, but rather than attack his former tag team partner, he gives him a hug. A truly emotional moment that I am very sincerely glad we got to witness. It's only a matter of time before those two pick up their feud where it left off. Unfortunately, it still could be 6 to 9 months down the road for Tommaso Ciampa. But as for Johnny Gargano, the possibilities are endless. He has many individuals that he can feud with. He can pick up at any point in time with Adam Cole. They're almost the Bret Hart, Shawn Michael comparison. They could just feud anytime. It will always be relevant. It will always be interesting. As fully anticipated, NXT TakeOver New York was the premier event of the entire WrestleMania weekend. That includes all promotions as well. Speaking of other promotions, I would be remiss if I did not discuss the G1 Supercard live from Madison Square Garden, the home turf of the WWE. It was ROH Pro Wrestling meets New Japan Pro Wrestling. Quite the partnership here, although, and I appear to be of the majority, that ROH was a bit of a letdown, while New Japan Pro Wrestling delivered as always. Few standout matches to me: Will Ospreay versus Jeff Cobb. Love that one. For the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship, Dragon defeated Bandito and Ishimori. That was probably my favorite match on the card. How about the IWGP Intercontinental Championship? You had Kota Ibushi defeating Naito. That was great. And the main event that started off a little bit slow but really picked up, it was Okada, the Rainmaker, is once again for the 5th time the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, defeating Switchblade Jay White. A bit of a transitional champion, but at the same time, his future is still extremely bright. So in my humble opinion, if we are comparing the two, New Japan Pro Wrestling came out on top. Moving along to the Hall of Fame, I had this on one screen and the G1 Supercard on the other. The Honky Tonk Man had an awkward, drawn-out speech that concluded with him singing. It should have just been him singing, and that would have been fine and satisfying. Tori Wilson showed up, gave a pretty inspirational speech. She was inducted by Stacy Keibler, which came as a big surprise. Brutus the Barber Beefcake and Hulk Hogan showed up to virtually no reaction whatsoever. I really thoroughly enjoyed Stevie Ray's speech. He handled the majority of it since Booker T's already been inducted. In my humble opinion, Harlem Heat, arguably the best peer, and I say peer not including the NWA portion of WCW, the best peer WCW tag team of all time. Unfortunately, the Hart Foundation's induction was marred with controversy. If you missed it, what occurred was Bret Hart was giving a speech. A crazed fan, identified as Zachary Madsen, who's an amateur MMA fighter, ran into the ring, tackled Bret Hart to the ground. Natalya went down with him. Travis Brown, who's the husband of Ronda Rousey, reacted very quickly. Same with Shane McMahon and the New Day. They all dove in to Bret's aid. Davey Boy Smith Jr., who was wearing the yellow pants, he got in there pretty quickly too. He was several rows behind. He threw some very stiff punches at this individual. They dragged him out of the ring. Dash Wilder also laid it in on this individual too. Now keep in mind, Bret Hart is a cancer survivor, a stroke survivor. He's 61 years old. This disgusted me. It made me sick. Bret Hart, as you know, is one of my biggest heroes in life. So watching this was incredibly frustrating. I knew exactly what happened too, because when they cut away, and I've worked in live broadcasting, you know something is wrong. So for any individual that claims that this was an obvious work, I would love to revoke your fan card status because it's such an uneducated and perplexing viewpoint. It was unfortunately legitimate. Now, this individual was taken to NYPD's 78th Precinct in Brooklyn. He was charged with 2 counts of assault and trespassing. It was assault, not only on Bret, but Natalya as well. Let's hope that he's banned, he receives a restraining order, and he's fined a severe amount of money. But like a true professional, Bret Hart, he's a trooper. He continued his speech. He even made light of it. Give the man credit where credit is due. Again, one of the greatest of all time and just a consummate professional. And then we moved along to D-Generation X. It was Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Chyna, Road Dogg, Billy Gunn, and X-Pac all being inducted. Yes, it was somewhat juvenile. It dragged on far too long, but it had some very memorable moments. Overall, I was pretty satisfied with the Hall of Fame, although, of course, that one event did ruin it in my eyes. I may have to take a deep breath for this one. WrestleMania 35 was 7.5 hours in length. Are you kidding me? I couldn't imagine being at MetLife Stadium. I would have been exhausted. Not only that, but imagine trying to leave when you have 83,000 plus trying to exit at the exact same time. You wouldn't even be home or at a hotel if you were nearby until about 2 o'clock in the morning. So let's talk about the pre-show. Tony Nese defeated the 205 Live juggernaut Buddy Murphy to win the Cruiserweight Championship. It was a solid match, and I was glad that the stadium was fairly full to see those two compete because, quite honestly, when you see those pre-show matches, the arena tends to be half empty, but it was about 3/4 full, and I was very surprised by the title change. Genuinely, I was. And if you're not watching 205 Live, you should be. I watch it on a weekly basis. It does tend to deliver. Next up, the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal. A returning Ember Moon was even featured in the match alongside Kairi Sane and Candice LeRae from NXT. A couple surprises there. The telegraphed Dana Brooke elimination was certainly a tad embarrassing since she literally ran over the pulled down rope from Deville. Go back and watch it. And did Lana really eliminate Ember Moon? Do my eyes deceive me? The finish came with Sarah Logan thinking that she won the match, only for Carmella to sneak in and eventually super kick Logan off the apron. Carmella wins the hideous trophy. No dance break, but we'll get to that later. Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins defeated the Revival to become the new Raw Tag Team Champions. It was a fairly good match. It was given over 13 minutes to tell a story. That surprised me. And the crowd was digging it too. Hawkins managed to snap his 269 match losing skid. It's about time. The Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal was a letdown in my eyes. While many found it amusing, I just believe it was a general waste of a lot of talent in the match. As expected, Braun Strowman won without breaking much of a sweat. So we get to the main card. Alexa Bliss opened the show by claiming she could create moments by the snap of her fingers right on cue. Real Americans started to play, and out walked Hulk Hogan. He joked about the Silver Dome, posed, blah, blah, blah. Then Paul Heyman came marching out, and he noted that him and Brock Lesnar would be immediately on a plane to Vegas to negotiate with the UFC. So it's time to get this match started. That's right, for the Universal Championship, it kicked off the main card of WrestleMania. A nice change of pace here, and Seth Rollins burnt Suplex City to the ground. After being dominated by Brock Lesnar, Seth landed a very opportunistic low blow, followed by 3 curb stomps to seal the deal and defeat the Beast Incarnate to become the new Universal Champion. Yes, we will finally see the title on a weekly basis. And with Brock very likely teasing that return to the UFC, it was long overdue that we will see that title change. We saw it. God, I was happy for Seth Rollins. AJ Styles defeated Randy Orton with the phenomenal forearm, a great match that unfortunately was marred with problems. The live audience was not privy to actually witnessing this match. Not all of them, but the vast majority, because according to live reports and photos, there were spotlights completely obstructing the view. Randy even stated on Instagram, the fans missed a great effing match. You could tell he was just a tad frustrated. I love the fact that AJ kicked out of the RKO. As I noted last week, when you effectively build a finisher as the end, and then somebody kicks out of it, it's a big deal. I compare it to Jake Roberts' DDT in that regard. The Usos retain their SmackDown Tag Team Championships over Ricochet and Aleister Black. Sheamus and Cesaro, and Nakamura and Rusev. I have long vocalized my displeasure for fatal 4-way matches, but generally speaking, this was a fun match featuring several memorable spots. Shane McMahon defeated The Miz in a Falls Count Anywhere match. Yes, we saw some big spots as expected. Heel Shane McMahon was in full Johnny Cash mode. I am the man in black. Originally, this got off to a poor start, at least in my eyes, when The Miz's father got involved, although it's led to a meme basically all over the internet if you want to check it out, with The Miz's dad throwing up his fist. He wants to fight. And once he was taken care of, I am willing to admit that my original assessment was quickly proven wrong. Were there stunts and big spots? You bet, but they worked. In a few of the notable ones, Shane McMahon took a gnarly bump over the guardrail onto a golf cart and then the cement floor. You can bet he's feeling that right about now. He's probably all bruised up. Not long after that, The Miz suplexed Shane off a platform with both crashing through a landing pad. Shane McMahon won by simply laying on top of The Miz. The Iconics defeated the Divas of Doom, the Boss and Hug Connection, along with Nia and Tamina to capture the Women's Tag Team Championship. The match fell flat in my eyes. It simply never gained much steam and the crowd wasn't fully engaged. That said, I loved Beth Phoenix's glam slam from the second rope onto Bayley. She likely came off the best in this match out of anybody. Next, we were treated to, hands down, the match of the night that saw Kofi Kingston, yes, Kofi Mania running wild, fulfill his 11-year destiny by defeating Daniel Bryan in the middle of the ring at WrestleMania 35. It was a great moment, and this match was perfectly positioned on the card as the fans were still alert enough to fully appreciate it. These two are simply made for each other, and they know how to properly build drama, as I was on the edge of my seat anticipating every move and pinfall. Either way, this was the ultimate heartwarming moment of the evening. Samoa Joe made quick work of Rey Mysterio by putting him to sleep in 1 minute on the dot. While I appreciate Rey's toughness to see this match through despite an ankle injury, perhaps a replacement would have been more logical. As expected, Roman Reigns, the big dog, defeated Drew McIntyre with the spear. This match was underwhelming and quite frankly mediocre, despite the big entrances, and I love Drew's. The chemistry just didn't seem to be there. and the fans weren't particularly into Roman's victory, a very predictable outcome. Elias was going to treat us to a synchronized video performance, but he was interrupted by the doctor of thugonomics, John Cena. And let's be honest, he has been sorely missed. John delivered, the fans loved it. It made for a very entertaining WrestleMania moment. By the way, when John covers his hair, he appears to have never aged. Triple H defeated Batista in a no-holds-barred match. Batista was so excited that he tripped through the ropes entering the ring. Truthfully, I felt really bad for him, but his effort in the match quickly put that memory to rest, although that's what the internet is for, to remind us that yes, this did transpire. I'll credit both men for pushing the pace to make this a memorable battle. It dragged on a bit too long for my liking, but that said, it was still quite enjoyable. Kurt Angle lost his farewell match to Baron Corbin, passing the torch to Mr. Olive Garden. It's quite common to do the honors on your way out, but I just wish his opponent was someone more meaningful. I think we all do. And either way, we say goodbye to undoubtedly one of the greatest all-around performers in the history of professional wrestling. The Demon Finn Balor defeated Bobby Lashley to capture his second Intercontinental Championship. I just felt really bad for these two as they were immediately put in a disadvantage given their spot on the card. By this point, the crowd was physically and mentally drained. Cue the dance break that no one wanted to participate in because it took place at nearly 12 in the morning. And then, yes, the main event took place officially on Monday morning. It was just after 12 a.m. on the East Coast, which is absolutely absurd, especially for anyone watching overseas. Many of those supporting Becky Lynch in Ireland were tuning in just after 5 a.m. on Monday morning. The match itself was fine, but due to crowd fatigue and a bit of overbooking, it failed to live up to the sky-high expectations. And most of that stems from the deflating conclusion that saw Ronda Rousey protest the 3 count as her shoulders weren't completely down. So the crowd didn't really come to it until eventually Becky Lynch had both titles raised in the air. We got our champion in Becky Lynch, which is great, but not our desired outcome. The match should have ended with Ronda tapping out to the disarmer. Instead, we witnessed a complete misstep that was reportedly never scheduled to happen. Did it take away from the match? Sadly, a little, but it certainly didn't take anything away from WrestleMania 35. Remember what I previously noted? If you entered with realistic expectations, the card would very likely deliver. I'm comfortable giving it a B+. I think it's well-earned, well-deserved. This actually marks the first WrestleMania since 2000 that did not include an appearance from The Undertaker. In post-WrestleMania, Batista announced his retirement via Twitter. A very memorable event overall. Let's get to the Raw after Mania. I thought it was actually really good, one of the better additions in years. It was great to see Seth Rollins open the show and promise to be a defending champion as the crowd chanted, "You deserve it," along with full-time champ. Yes, it's actually quite surreal. Kofi Kingston and the New Day showed up and they received a big reaction. Kofi ultimately challenged Seth Rollins to a winner-take-all match with both championships on the line. Knowing the WWE, instantly I thought, this is too good to be true. A few notes, apparently Big E can do the splits. And I love the way the New Day rocks out to Seth Rollins music, air drums and all. Highly, highly entertaining. Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins retained the Raw Tag Team Championships over the Revival. Yet another fairly reputable match between the two. Kurt Hawkins on a 2-match winning streak. Unbelievable. Kurt Angle came out to beat up Baron Corbin, which he was successful at, but not so much on part 2. This led to the main roster debut of Lars Sullivan. Lars hit Angle with the freak accident, followed by a flying headbutt, which he hit perfectly from across the ring. It looked great. A very impactful debut. Let's hope his anxiety problems are behind him, as there's plenty of upside to Lars. Alexa Bliss defeated Bayley in under 3 minutes with the DDT. Don't let the size fool you. Miss 5 Feet of Fury is a constant threat, perhaps challenging for that championship at some point soon. Becky Lynch came out with both titles. She celebrated in front of the live crowd, and they were very loud and receptive. Lisi Evans made her typical runway appearance, but when Becky confronted her, the champ was met with the woman's rights. The two brawled. Lacey narrowly escaped the disarm her. I'm all for a fresh feud. I'm a little nervous about this one because it feels rushed, but at the same time, I'm looking forward to something other than Becky and Ronda and Charlotte. So I'm for it. Again, it could be too much too soon. And that's not a knock on her abilities. Either way, I hope the best here because the women's division needs new stars. Aleister Black and Ricochet defeated Bobby Roode and Chad Gable. Following the victory, Roode hit Ricochet with a cheap shot. Could it be a heel turn for the glorious duo? In perhaps the strangest moment in years, I'm actually queasy just thinking about it. In a backstage vignette that featured a box with smoke coming out of it, a bizarre dinosaur puppet. I'm not joking. This is Russo-style booking here. Popped up and started laughing. If this is Bray Wyatt's new gimmick as a deranged puppet master obsessed with Jurassic Park, I'm going to lose it. What the hell is going on? Who thought that was a good idea? Really? Will we see it again on SmackDown Live? Spoiler, probably. In Dean Ambrose's rumored final Raw appearance, he was put through a table by Bobby Lashley in front of his wife, Renee Young. Sami Zayn made his long-awaited return and issued an open challenge. This brought out Finn Balor, who put his Intercontinental title on the line. A great match between the two that saw Balor win following the coup de grace. Now, with the loss, Sami Zayn promptly turned heel and promised to hold the crowd accountable for their actions on a weekly basis. If you caught his appearance on Talk is Jericho, that's where the majority of these thoughts and material came from. Definitely a very effective promo and moment. Elias came out and basically he noted that anybody that interrupts him will be a dead man, and he accidentally summoned The Undertaker. Whoops, that was a mistake. It was great to see The Undertaker make a surprise appearance. Well received, although Bret Hart sort of gave that surprise away because he posted a picture of the two on Instagram before the show. WWE Champion Kofi Kingston took on the Universal Champion Seth Rollins, both titles on the line, but it ended in DQ after the Bar attacked Kofi. It was quite the cop-out that left the crowd extremely angered and disappointed. Now, following Raw, Dean Ambrose made his final appearance. The cameras were off. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins were there. Could this be it? Or has he resigned? Either way, all signs seem to be alluding to the fact that he is actually done. Unless somehow, some way, they bring him back. But Seth and Roman in interviews have been very honest and genuine in the fact that they're going to supremely miss him. And you know what? Truthfully, I will too. He's had a lot of highs and lows, but it's going to be strange to see Dean Ambrose anywhere else other than in WWE. SmackDown opened with the New Day celebrating Kofi's victory. Xavier Woods claimed he was out of tears, and Big E once again landed the splits. Jeez. The Bar interrupted the New Day, asked for a match with all three, then introduced Drew McIntyre as their partner. Ali, Ricochet, and Aleister Black defeated Nakamura, Rusev, and Andrade. Randy Orton flew in out of nowhere to land the RKO on Ali, while Kevin Owens made a surprise appearance by hitting the stunner on Rusev, who, by the way, sold it beautifully. R-Truth and Carmella showed up, but were immediately interrupted by Samoa Joe, who attacked Truth. Joe took to the microphone to brag about his victory over Ray. He disposed of Mr. 619 in exactly 1 minute at WrestleMania. This prompted a surprise appearance from Braun Strowman, who proceeded to march down to the ring and beat up Samoa Joe. The Iconics defeated the Brooklyn Bells. You've never heard of them? Well, that's because they're local jobbers. Backstage, Paige was watching on a television monitor. She noted that she has a very impressive tag team of her own for the Superstar Shakeup. Who could it be? Perhaps a duo from NXT UK. More on that shortly. Shane McMahon came out, ran down The Miz. The crowd loudly chanted CM Punk, which Shane blew off with "Please." Shane then bullied Greg Hamilton, the ring announcer, into announcing him as the best in the world on multiple occasions. In fact, his job was on the line if he did not show enough passion. Ultimately, he did, but at this point, if I'm Greg, I'd want to go to Raw for the Superstar Shakeup. Escape the bullying Shane McMahon, who has all the power, by the way. The Hardys defeated the Usos to capture the SmackDown Tag Team Championship. I'm not going to spoil my prediction, but could the Usos be heading elsewhere next week during the Superstar Shakeup? It's possible. Lars Sullivan then showed up and destroyed the Hardys. It was very reminiscent of when Brock Lesnar destroyed the Hardys in a handicap match. Becky Lynch celebrated in front of the SmackDown audience. When she left, Lisi Evans once again cold-cocked her with the woman's right. Sami Zayn walked out on stage. The crowd was singing, oh, let's go. And then he said, yeah, you're not worth it. And he just simply walked away. And that was it. Then it's the main event. The New Day defeated Drew McIntyre and The Bar. Kofi even brought his family into the ring to celebrate. And the show concluded. All in all, 2 great post-WrestleMania episodes of Raw and SmackDown. With the Superstar Shakeup less than 1 week away, I am joined by editor-in-chief of thegorillaposition.com, Ryan Boman, as we speculate and make our predictions as to who could be switching brands next week.
Our topic of the week.
The annual Superstar Shakeup will officially take place next week on Raw and SmackDown Live from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. This year, it's particularly intriguing because SmackDown Live will debut on Fox. It's Friday, October the 19th. You can mark it on your calendar. One has to imagine they will look to fill the show with some marquee names, as the network deal is reportedly worth upwards of $1 billion. Ryan, do you believe that they're going to stack up SmackDown Live because Fox wants this great card every single Friday?
I think we're definitely going to see the marquee names. I think at least one of the 2 former UFC stars will, if not both, will be part of that Fox lineup at SmackDown Live because, let's face it, they are positioning this as a more sports-oriented show. So I think anybody that comes in that's a legitimate athlete from outside, whether it be football or UFC or any outside endeavors, any celebrities from outside, I think will get steered more towards that Fox show because they're counting on that for some mega ratings.
They are. And I do believe it's going to deliver in a lot of ways, perhaps not to the extent that they wanted to, but at the same time, regardless of what people are saying about the WWE and the ratings, they still bring in pretty solid ratings compared to other shows on cable television.
Yes, this will be their first endeavor into what I guess we would call terrestrial television, free TV, for lack of a better term. So to the idea for someone like us, for guys like us who grew up in an era when everything was in syndication or you'd see it on TBS on Saturdays, things like that, wrestling in prime time on network television is something on a regular basis. I mean, we had the main event at one time, but for wrestling on primetime network television, I never thought in my life I'd ever see that again.
It's pretty exciting for sure. Yeah, and I mean, especially because they paid upwards of $1 billion reportedly for this deal. So they're in it for the long haul. I believe, is this a 5-year deal? I think so, right?
Well, initially I thought it was 3, but I believe you're right. I think it is 5. Normally when these companies sign a deal of that magnitude, they're going to have you around for a while.
Yeah.
I would assume 5 years sounds about right. I think that's what the USA deal was as well.
So let the speculation begin, because there's a lot of names that could be going to Raw and, of course, on SmackDown. Now, there's a couple X Factors as well, too. We have a bunch of NXT stars. I put that in quotations. You can't see me. That are basically in the proverbial no man's land because they don't belong to Raw or SmackDown. They're not the property of either show. So at this point, it's going to be that fork in the road. Which way are they going to go? So we're talking about EC3, Heavy Machinery, Lisi Evans, a whole bunch of them.
Well, when there's a fork in the road, I like to take both paths. So I honestly think this shakeup, and I might be throwing a monkey wrench in where you're going with this, but I think this shakeup is going to signal the end of the brand extension. I think we're headed towards one belt, one women's title,
really,
one tag team title. Yeah, I think the idea of having two separate shows where you run into that issue now, you're going to have two separate rosters on two separate networks. And I don't think that either one of them is going to back down when, let's say, Fox won AJ Styles on my show,
True.
and USA wants AJ Styles, rather than have all that confusion and that mess, or particularly basically having to serve two masters, you can do that more effectively just having one roster.
So basically, you believe that this could just be optics. The fact that they get transferred to another show, but we're still going to see them on SmackDown Live on Fridays then.
Yeah, I think in essence that's what we're doing right now. I mean, you saw Braun Strowman pop up on
Drew
SmackDown.
McIntyre.
Drew McIntyre. You know, we've seen guys jumping brands. Now we've got the NXT guys bleeding over without officially being part of any roster.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll probably do some sort of a makeshift brand extension. They'll probably keep them in storyline separate, but in essence, the roster is going to start jumping back and forth. And I think they're building towards these unification matches over the summer, leading up to that move to the SmackDown move to Fox in the fall, where you can kind of just put any guy on any show at any time and satisfy both networks.
Makes sense to me. I'm going to throw out some names and let me know where you believe they're going to land, because I'll give you my speculation, at least on Raw here. I believe that AJ Styles, without a doubt, is going to Raw, because he's been on SmackDown. It's the house that he built. His words, not mine, although I do tend to agree with it, especially over the past couple of years. But I think he's accomplished basically everything there is to accomplish on SmackDown. Raw seems like an ideal destination for the phenomenal one.
Once again, we agree way too much, but I think you're right. Not only has he done everything there is to do on SmackDown, but right now there's a guy holding the Universal title that makes for one hell of an intriguing matchup.
It does.
Ian Rollins, maybe at SummerSlam. I agree. I think it's the time for him to make a move and freshen things up a little bit.
It'd be great, especially if they do want to keep around Gallows and Anderson, if they brought them to Raw, reunited, and it feels so good. The Bullet Club, so to speak, at least in the WWE, and Finn Balor could be there too. That would be intriguing.
And that's a move that I think we've all been wondering, like, why don't they pull the trigger on this at some point? I know
Long
they
overdue.
don't like to acknowledge things that happened in other companies. I understand that, but then they do it anyway. You know, they hate to admit that they're going to do that, or that they're using someone else's ideas, but then they end up turning around and do it anyway as like a desperation moment. Why not just capitalize on it now? I agree. Send those guys over to Raw, have them bail out Finn and do that 4-man crew for a while.
Similar to AJ Styles, a team, and I believe you know where I'm going with this, that has nothing left to accomplish on SmackDown and everything to accomplish on Raw, are the Usos. And I believe they are also heading to Team Red.
It would make sense since they just dropped the belts also to the Hardys. So, yeah, I think that makes sense. I could see them going either way, where, hey, it's possible we want to keep some of our established names that have been on this brand. We don't want to totally flip everybody. I'm kind of 50-50 on that one.
I would love to see them still on SmackDown, but at the same time, they do legitimize Monday Night Raw, because even though there are some talented tag teams over there, don't get me wrong, I believe the Usos, of course, are the best in the business today. So they lend a lot of cred on Team Red.
Yeah, I think you put the Usos up there with teams like, you know, if you want to look around there, I've always said LAX is the Usos of Impact. So anytime you're the measuring stick, or you're the example, someone is the Usos of whatever, that tells you all you need to know. That means that they're kind of the goal right now. I think they'd fare well on Raw. Yeah. I don't have a problem with them staying right there in SmackDown either.
How about Naomi? Makes sense, of course, with the marriage there. She could probably go to Raw. I think that she needs a bit of a run somewhere else as well, too.
Yeah, you know, and a lot of times you see this where they're almost naturally seems like the couple should be together on the same brand or involved in storylines. But in WWE, you see that even less. You look at like Zelina Vega. She interfered against her husband in a match the other night, you know, and people behind the scenes obviously know they're married. They've kind of put those two together a lot on TV. I think you're right. I think it would be good for her to get away, you know, not be Mrs. Uso. You know,
true.
Chance to kind of spread her wings over on Raw for a while. I like that move as well.
How about Mandy Rose or Sonya Deville? I don't believe both of them, but it makes sense to split them up at this point in time.
I would honestly have to ask at this point, which brand are they on again? Because
they're on SmackDown, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like, I think if anything, if you're going to go sports on one show and more entertainment on the other, I'd send Mandy to Raw and I'd keep Sonya on SmackDown.
Yeah, that makes total sense. How about Lars Sullivan on Monday Night Raw? Add another just freak to the roster.
Yeah, honestly, when he walked halfway down the ramp the other night, it almost, I for a split second thought, oh, cold feet again, because he paused for a minute and he had a look on his face like, I don't know what's going on here, but then he got with it and he was great. I think he's going to be all right. Honestly, right now, I don't think I'd move him around a lot. I wouldn't do anything with him. I'd keep the training wheels on him. He's had some issues, we know, and I'm not making light of it in any way.
Sure,
but he's kind of a fragile guy. I think I'd stick him wherever you put him now is where I'd leave him.
Do you think Samoa Joe might head over to Raw with the United States Championship?
That's actually a belt. When I was talking about consolidating titles, that's one I think that might go away sooner rather than later. And I think that they would obviously title because of the tradition there. But yeah, if he jumps to Raw and then has a unification match with the Intercontinental Champion, whoever that may be, that's a possibility. I'm wondering if we'll see that we've seen in the past where the secondary title holder or even the world title holder, they swap places, where the Universal title would go to SmackDown and vice versa, or the Intercontinental title move into SmackDown. I don't know if we'll see that or not. I don't know how much they want to mess with the titles and the brands in that way.
Definitely. I think another lock, due to the fact that he does have a show now on the USA Network, is The Miz, especially because that feud with Shane McMahon has seemingly come to a conclusion as well.
Yeah, I don't going to get much out of that feud with Shane anyway. I don't think anybody foresaw that as being a career maker or star making performance on either of their parts. I agree. You got to, obviously the show is apparently very successful on that network. Have him on Monday Night Raw from 7 to 10 and lead into Miz and Mrs. right after the show.
Yeah, might as well. How about in 7 to 10, your time, right? Your central time.
Yeah, 7 to 10 central.
So, because I heard that and I was thinking, no, it's always 8 to 11 for me. And then I realized, of course, you have that hour difference between me and you.
We get to go to bed earlier in the Midwest.
That's true. How about EC3? He's actually just been paired with Drake Maverick, a.k.a. Rockstar Spud, his old buddy.
Yeah. And that means they've still got some kind of plans for him, because it sure seems like he was getting lost in the shuffle. And again, kind of like the Lisi Evans thing, where we were kind of confused on what he was doing there, if he wasn't going to do anything. I truthfully, those two should be on Raw. I think he and Spud together, or he and Drake together now, will be, they can capture some of that old magic that they had. And they were one of the very few bright spots in a dark time in Impact Wrestling. So they could maybe be that same bright spot in WWE on Monday Night Raw, which is sorely needed also.
I laugh, though, because they obviously don't have a lot of faith in EC3's ability to chat on the microphone. He's a great promo, and that's kind of going off the rails a little bit here. But
he's funny. In real life, he's a funny guy. I've interviewed him 3 times or 4 times. I don't remember how many times when he was with Impact, and he's just one of the most personable, charismatic guys in real life. He's a smart ass, but it's dry humor,
Sure.
And it's funny. It comes off really well. You give him that kind of almost like The Rock. That's who when he talks, he sounds like. When he's not being EC3 and he's just talking like himself, he has that swagger a little bit. He's got that thing. And
confidence.
I honestly, if you ask me what brand he should be on, I would say Impact, because I think that's where he's best suited. But if I have him there, I'm putting those 2 guys on Raw.
A few more I'm going to throw out. This time for SmackDown Live. You already alluded to the fact that we're either going to see Ronda Rousey or Brock Lesnar, perhaps both, because it's being reported that Fox is pushing very hard for both of them, especially Ronda on SmackDown Live, which is odd to me because she's never appeared on SmackDown Live, to my knowledge.
No, I think it still falls into that more the legitimate mainstream athlete thing, and I honestly think it's going to be Brock. I think he's going to SmackDown. Yeah. I believe that obviously it's for his sake, it's good because he's on a bigger network. It's primetime network television. It just ups his brand, and on top of it, I think we're going to be coming off of him making an MMA appearance, a UFC appearance, right before we go to Fox in the fall. Daniel Cormier is going to be involved with that show. It makes all the sense. Goes to SmackDown.
His old stomping ground. He was quite the fixture on that show back in about 2003, so it would be very intriguing to see him back on Team Blue. How about Drew McIntyre? Could you see him moving over to SmackDown Live? Now, he just got called up last year to Raw, but he would be fantastic on SmackDown, and I feel as though, especially after losing to Roman in such an underwhelming fashion, that he needs a bit of a reboot.
Yeah, they need to get him away from the Shield guys. They need to. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with him on Raw, he went from a guy that we thought would be maybe challenging for the world title now, the Universal title, to a guy that's just sort of another big guy they throw out there to lose to Roman or to lose to Seth or I mean, I haven't seen them capitalize on him much at all.
I'm going to throw out a few shockers. Sasha Banks. That's one that I feel as though her and Bayley, they could always reunite again, but I feel as though they want that star power on SmackDown, and they're going to move the boss.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I also think Sasha, because she has a lot of mainstream credibility also, and the Snoop Dogg connection and all that, I think that works out well for them to move her to SmackDown. And as you said, that might be another reason why they drop the belts, so that they can be separated.
Exactly. A few other names I'm going to throw out. How about Pete Dunne? I've been reading rumors that he's going to be moving to the main roster. SmackDown would be perfect for him.
Again, if you're talking about making it more of a sport, you've got a guy that's a grappler. He gives it an international feel. I think that Fox is going to like that whole idea of having a lot of competitors from different places all over the world. It makes the show look global. I'd say Pete Dunne and SmackDown are a marriage made in heaven.
If you're moving the Usos to Raw, it's natural that you replace them with another tag team. How about the Revival?
The Revival on SmackDown, again, that same style, athletic workers in the ring, less flash and more dash, with no pun intended. But
no flips, just fists.
That's right, and they would be another perfect addition for SmackDown.
A few more. I've been reading that Buddy Murphy could be potentially moving away from 205 Live. Of course, his reign just came to a conclusion at WrestleMania. Tony Nese is now the champion, the flag bearer of the show. Could he be moving over?
I think if he makes a move, I think Buddy would look good with the Raw roster. I think that you've got I think that he's got an appeal to him that I think they could capture with the show, especially working with him in vignettes and kind of build his character. I don't know. For some reason, I think he's even got more charisma at that next level than we've seen in 205 Live.
A few more names that could be heading over to SmackDown. Ricochet. You want to talk about legitimate. Talk about an athlete, a once-in-a-generation athlete in some respects.
Yeah, I think that those two guys are not going to be together when this is all said and done. I think Alistair's going to be on Raw, and I believe you're right. I think Ricochet's going to SmackDown.
Ember Moon. Someone I am a big fan of. I just don't believe she's had the opportunities on Raw, but she could on SmackDown.
I agree with that. I'd tell you what, Ember's another one that I'm just shocked that they haven't found some niche for her that works well. Now, I know she's had some injuries too, but
sure.
Boy, she looked like dynamite. I mean, the matches between her and Asuka in NXT, if they could recreate that on SmackDown,
amazing.
Yeah, I'd love to see her work over there on SmackDown and be working with Asuka again.
I'll go with a final name, and then I'll bring up something that Paige mentioned on SmackDown. Lisi Evans. Should she be on SmackDown or Raw?
Oh, definitely a Raw character in my mind. I mean, she fits more the motion picture that they're trying to make, where they're trying to make it look like a sport on SmackDown. They're trying to make it look like a movie on Monday Night Raw, and she's a movie star.
So Paige mentioned on SmackDown Live just a couple of days ago that she's going to be bringing in a new tag team. Now, could this be existing members on the roster or perhaps a duo from NXT? If that's the case, who could she be alluding to here? The Sky Pirates by chance?
Well, I thought about it, so heard possibly, and I don't want to spoil anything for anybody because I don't know if this is true or not, but two of the girls from the UK possibly.
So Rhea Ripley would be one of them? You think so?
Yes. Yeah, and that makes sense because obviously Paige is from the UK. And I think that, I'm thinking it's going to be two of the UK girls.
So Rhea for sure, and then somebody else. I read that too, actually. Maybe the same article.
Yeah, I've been hearing that a couple different places. Again, I'm kind of flying. I was hoping you knew who Paige was bringing in because I have no clue. I do find it kind of intriguing. I actually posted the clip on the website as our SmackDown clip this week because I thought, well, that's a good mystery. WWE doesn't have a lot of, or we almost always know what's going to happen the week before it happens, and so it's kind of nice. We had a few big questions this week. We had a question: who's Paige going to bring in as a mystery tag team, and what the hell was that thing in the box? And those were the two greatest stories of the week.
Not the mama. That's what I thought when I saw it.
Yeah, I just thought of Fraggle Rock, the old TV show.
Jeez.
Yeah, I don't know. It was bad puppeteering. It was bad.
The less time we discuss it, the better, in my eyes.
Absolutely. That's what they want us to do. I'm not falling into that trap. Going down that rabbit hole.
So either way, the Superstar Shakeup takes place next week on Raw and SmackDown live from Montreal. I'm excited to see what transpires. Ryan, thanks for joining me again.
Thanks as always, Chris.
You're listening to The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
That is all she wrote. We covered a lot of ground on this episode of the program. And in fact, you're listening to it a little bit earlier than usual because I am at Jerry Seinfeld on Thursday evening. I'm super excited for it. The legendary Jerry Seinfeld. Can mark that off the bucket list. So I'll let you know how that goes. And in the meantime, I would be so grateful if you kept telling your friends, family, and especially fellow wrestling fans, that helps, to tune into the program, share it, like it, retweet it, do everything you can, review it, give it 5 stars. And until next Thursday, happy trails to you until we meet again.
This concludes another episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. For new episodes, subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. And don't forget to follow The Signature Spot on Facebook for exclusive clips, polls, and opinions.